trouble, Wally, with always being active and doing things is that I think it's quite possible to do all sorts of things and at the same time be completely dead inside. I mean, you're doing all these things, but are you doing them because you really feel an impulse to do them? Or are you doing them mechanically, as we were saying before? Because I really do believe that if you're just living mechanically, then you have to change your life. You know, when you're young, you go out on dates all the time, you go dancing or something, you're floating free, and then one day suddenly you find yourself in a relationship, and suddenly everything freezes. And this can be true in your work as well. And I mean, of course, if you're really alive inside, then of course there's no problem. I mean, if you're living with somebody in one little room and there's a life going on between you and the person you're living with, well, then a whole adventure can be going on right in that room. But there's always the danger that things can go dead. Then I really do think you have to kind of become a hobo or something, you know, like Kerouac, and go out on the road. I really believe that. You know, it's not that wonderful to spend your life on the road. And my own overwhelming preference is to stay in that room if you can. But, you know, if you live with somebody for a long time, people are constantly saying, well, of course it's not as great as it used to be, but that's only natural. The first blush of a romance goes, and that's the way it has to be. Now, I totally disagree with that. But I do think that you have to constantly ask yourself the question with total frankness. Is your marriage still a marriage? Is the sacramental element there? Just as you have to ask about the sacramental element in your work, is it still there? I mean, it's a very frightening thing, Wally, to have to suddenly realize that, my God, I thought I was living my life, but in fact, I haven't been a human being. I've been a performer. I haven't been living, I've been acting. I've acted the role of the father. I've acted the role of the husband. I've acted the role of the friend. I've acted the role of the writer, director, what have you. I've lived in the same room with this person, but I haven't really seen them. I haven't really heard them. I haven't really been with them.
Yeah, I know some people are just sometimes existing just side by side. I mean, the other person's face could just turn into a great wolf's face and just wouldn't be noticed.
And it wouldn't be noticed. No, it wouldn't be noticed. I mean, when I was in Israel a little while ago, I mean, I have this picture of Chiquita that was taken when I always carry it with me. It was taken when she was about 26 or something, and it's in summer, and she's stretched out on a terrace in a sort of old-fashioned long skirt that's kind of pulled up, and she's slim and sensual and beautiful. And I've always looked at that picture and just thought about just how sexy she looks. And then last year in Israel, I looked at the picture, and I realized that that face in the picture was the saddest face in the world. That girl at that time was just lost. So sad and so alone. You know, I've been carrying this picture for years and not ever really seeing what it is. You know, I just never really looked at the picture. And then at a certain point, I realized I'd just gone for a good 18 years unable to feel, except in the most extreme situations. I mean, to some extent, I still had the ability to live in my work. That was why I was such a work junkie. That was why I felt that every play that I did was a matter of my life or my death. But in my real life, I was dead. I was a robot. You know, I didn't even allow myself to get angry or annoyed. I mean, you know, today, Chiquita, Nicholas, Marina, all day long, as people do. They do things that annoy me, and they say things that annoy me. And today, I get annoyed, and they say, why are you annoyed? And I say, because you're annoying, you know. And when I allowed myself to consider the possibility of not spending the rest of my life with Chiquita, I realized that what I wanted most in life was to always be with her. But at that time, I hadn't learned what it would be like to let yourself react to another human being. And if you can't react to another person, then there's no possibility of action or interaction. And if there isn't, I don't really know what the word love means, except duty, obligation, sentimentality, fear. I don't know about you, Wally, but I just have to put myself into a kind of training program to learn how to be a human being. I mean, how did I feel about anything? I didn't know. What kind of things did I like? What kind of people did I really want to be with, you know? And the only way that I could think of to find out was to just cut out all the noise and stop performing all the time and just listen to what was inside me. See, I think a time comes when you need to do that. Now, maybe in order to do it, you have to go to the Sahara, and maybe you can do it at home. But you need to cut out the noise.
Yeah, of course. Personally, I usually don't like those quiet moments. I really don't. I mean, I don't know if it's that Freudian thing or what, but the fear of unconscious impulses or my own aggression or whatever. But if things get too quiet, and I find myself just sitting there, as we were saying before. I mean, whether I'm by myself or I'm with someone else. I just have this feeling of, my God, I'm going to be revealed. In other words, I'm adequate to do any sort of a task, but I'm not adequate just to be a human being. I mean, in other words, I'm not. If I'm just trapped there and I'm not allowed to do things, but all I can do is just be there, well, I'll just fail. I mean, in other words. I can pass any other sort of a test, and I can even get an A if I put in the required effort. But I just don't have a clue how to pass this test. I mean, of course, I realize this isn't a test, but I see it as a test, and I feel I'm going to fail it. I mean, it's very scary. I just feel totally at sea. I mean,
I could imagine a life, Wally, in which each day would become an incredible, monumental, creative task. And we're not necessarily up to it. I mean, if you felt like walking out on the person you live with, you'd walk out. Then if you felt like it, you'd come back. But meanwhile, the other person would have reacted to your walking out. It would be a life of such feeling. I mean, what was amazing in the workshops I led was how quickly people seemed to fall into enthusiasm, celebration, joy, wonder, abandon, wildness, tenderness. Could we stand to live like that?
Yeah, I think it's that moment of contact with another person. I mean, that's what scares us. I mean, that moment of being face to face with another person. I mean, now, you wouldn't think it would be so frightening. It's strange that we find it so frightening.
Well, it isn't that strange. I mean, first of all, there are some pretty good reasons for being frightened. I mean, a human being is a complex and dangerous creature. I mean, really, if you start living each moment, Christ, that's quite a challenge. I mean, if you really reach out, you're really in touch with the other person, well, that really is something to strive for, I think. I really do.
Yeah, it's just so pathetic if one doesn't do that.
Of course, there's a problem, because the closer you come, I think, to another human being, the more completely mysterious and unreachable that person becomes. I mean, you have to reach out. You have to go back and forth with them, and you have to relate, and yet you're relating to a ghost or something. I don't know, because we're ghosts. We're phantoms. Who are we? And that's to face, to confront the fact that you're completely alone, and to accept that you're alone is to accept death.
You mean because somehow when you are alone, you're alone with death? I mean, nothing's obstructing your view of it or something like that.
Right.
If I understood it correctly, I think Heidegger said that if you were to experience your own being to the full, you'd be experiencing the decay of that being toward death as a part of your experience.
In the sexual act, there's that moment of complete forgetting, which is so incredible. Then in the next moment, you start to think about things. Work on the play, what you've got to do tomorrow. I don't know if this is true of you, but I think it must be quite common. The world comes in quite fast. Now, that again may be because we're afraid to stay in that place of forgetting, because that again is close to death, like people who are afraid to go to sleep. In other words, you interrelate, and you don't know what the next moment will bring, and to not know what the next moment will bring brings you closer to a perception of death. You see, that's why I think that people have affairs. I mean, in the theater, if you get good reviews, you feel for a moment that you've got your hands on something. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a good feeling. But then that feeling goes quite quickly. And once again, you don't know quite what you should do next. What'll happen? Well, have an affair, and up to a certain point, you can really feel that you're on firm ground. There's a sexual conquest to be made. There are different questions. Does she enjoy the ears being nibbled? How intensely can you talk about Schopenhauer at some elegant French restaurant? Whatever nonsense it is. It's all, I think, to give you the semblance that there's firm earth. Well, have a real relationship with a person that goes on for years. That's completely unpredictable. Then you've cut off all your ties to the land and you're sailing into the unknown, into uncharted seas. I mean, People hold on to these images of father, mother, husband, wife, again, for the same reason, because they seem to provide some firm ground. But there's no wife there. What does that mean? A wife, a husband, a son. A baby holds your hands, and then suddenly there's this huge man lifting you off the ground, and then he's gone. Where's that son?